I want to tell you about a man who looked absolutely perfect on paper. Same religion, great job. He was actually both a firefighter and a nurse. My parents would have loved him. And he actually graduated from high school with a few of my friends. Plus, we figured out that he was related to some other friends of mine. Small world. He checked every box that I thought I was supposed to be checking. And when I got the flu and could barely get out of bed, I never heard from him again. That's the story I want to tell you today. Not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. There were no fireworks, no big blow ups, no obvious red flags waving in my face. It was quieter than that. And honestly, quiet, low effort is harder to see than chaos. Because when someone is nice enough and looks good enough on paper, you can talk yourself into accepting a lot less than you deserve. I know. I did it for 7 months. We dated for 7 months. And in that 7 months, the only thing we ever did together were to hang out at his place, go out to dinner, and attend one concert at my temple. That was it. No spontaneity, no real effort to create any kind of shared experience beyond what was convenient. And that concert, that was at my temple, not something he planned or initiated. The effort was always minimal, and it was usually mine. He lived about 45 minutes away, and occasionally he needed to pick up something he needed for his job that was 5 minutes from my house. And I would run the errand for him and then go to his place so that he didn't have to drive out to me. I want you to sit with that for a second. I was running errands for a man who couldn't drive 45 minutes to take me somewhere new. I was always wondering how he felt about me. That low hum of uncertainty that never quite went away, no matter how many dinners we had. At some point, I got up the nerve to ask him about what we were doing. It's probably about 5 or 6 months in. I didn't really need a label. I just wanted to know where his head was at. And he said, "We have time to see where it goes and figure it out." And I talked myself into being okay with that because he looked great on paper, because he was a nice guy, because my parents would have approved, especially since he was the first Jewish guy I had dated in a very long time. Because somewhere along the way, I had started dating a resume instead of a relationship. And because I was hoping it would turn into something different than it was. He even offered once to write my daughter a recommendation letter to get into nursing school, which was a nice gesture, except that he had never met her. Not once in 7 months had he met any of my kids. I said no, because how could he recommend someone he didn't know? But I remember thinking how sweet it was for him to offer. He could play the part of a good partner. He just couldn't show up as one. And then I got the flu. He was working the day the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup. He was a firefighter, so he had to be at the parade. And he told me he would call when he got home. He never called. It took me a few days to realize that he wasn't going to, because I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. He'd had a long day. He was tired. He'd call tomorrow. And then tomorrow kept coming. 7 months. And that's how it ended. And here's what I want to say about that relationship and about where I was at that point in my life. You see, my self esteem was actually pretty good then. I knew my worth in a general sense. But here's something that nobody tells you: good self esteem doesn't automatically protect you from accepting less than you deserve. Those are two completely different things. You can know your value and still accept breadcrumbs. You can know you deserve more and still talk yourself into being okay with less because he's nice enough, because he looks good on paper and checks all the boxes, because you don't want to seem too demanding, because you're not sure you're going to find better. I can keep going. I was accepting breadcrumbs, not because I didn't know better, but because I hadn't yet connected my self-worth to my standards. And that connection, that's the work. The consistency test, by the way, he failed it in the most honest way possible. When I was sick and vulnerable, when I actually needed someone to show up, he disappeared. That is who he was. Not the dinner reservations, not the recommendation letter offer, the flu. That's where his character showed up. Now, I want to talk about something that took me a long time to understand. And once I did, it changed everything about how I dated. There is a reason that unpredictable, inconsistent relationships can feel so intense, so alive, so much like chemistry. And it's not because they're right for you. It's because your nervous system is responding to uncertainty the same way it responds to excitement. When someone is inconsistent, when you never quite know where you stand, when the good moments are incredible and the distance in between is confusing, your brain releases dopamine every single time they come back. Every text, every warm moment after a cold stretch. It hits like a reward, and your brain starts chasing the next one. That is not chemistry. That's a cycle, and it can feel almost identical to falling in love, especially if inconsistency is what you've experienced in your early relationships. The clinical term for the most extreme version of this is trauma bonding. But you don't have to be in a traumatic relationship for this pattern to show up. It shows up anytime there's enough unpredictability to keep you slightly off balance. And here's the important part I really want you to hear. When a genuinely consistent man shows up, one who texts you when he says he's going to, plans real dates, and follows through, treats you the same way on a hard day as a good one, he can feel a little boring, a little flat, like something's missing. But nothing is missing. Your nervous system just hasn't learned to recognize safety as exciting yet. And that is the work. So let's talk for a few minutes about that 90-day consistency test. You see, the first 90 days are going to tell you almost everything you need to know. That is, if you're paying attention to his actions and watching what he does, not just feeling what he makes you feel. This is what consistent effort actually looks like. He makes real plans with actual dates in advance, and he follows through. Not, we should get together sometime, specific plans that he initiates and shows up for. His words and his actions match every time. You're not spending time and energy trying to figure out what he actually means or wondering if he meant what he said. He shows up the same way regardless of his mood. If he's having a bad day, it stays his. He doesn't take it out on you. And he doesn't go cold when things get hard and then he reappears acting like nothing happened. He makes time for you and he protects it. You don't feel like you're competing with everybody else in his life just to get an evening. And at day 90, 3 months in, he is the same man he was on day 3. No sudden shifts, no new version of him that only shows up sometimes. A man who is performing at the beginning will start to slip by day 90. But a man who is genuinely consistent just keeps showing up the same way each and every day, quietly, reliably, and without making a big production of it. That is what you're watching for. So before I sign off, let's talk about what to do if consistent men feel boring. I want to address this directly because I think it's one of the most important things I can say in this entire Green Flag series. If you have ever met a genuinely good, consistent, emotionally available man and felt nothing at the beginning, underwhelmed, kind of flat, like something was missing, I want you to hear this. That is not a sign he's wrong for you. That is a sign that your nervous system has been calibrated to something it shouldn't have been. When your baseline has been uncertainty, waiting, wondering, working for someone's attention, consistency can register as boring because there's nothing to chase, no anxiety to mistake for excitement, But boring is not the opposite of passion. Boring is the opposite of anxiety. And anxiety is not love. Real love feels steady. It feels safe. It feels like you can exhale, let go, and be yourself. And if that sounds boring to you right now, that is important information for you to look at. It is not a judgment. It's an invitation to look at what you've been mistaking for chemistry. We are in week 3 of talking about green flags, and we're talking about effort and consistency because emotional availability and communication mean nothing without the follow through. Words are easy. Consistency is the proof. Remember, I spent 7 months with a man who looked perfect on paper, same religion, great job, nice guy, and he couldn't even drive 45 minutes out to me. And he couldn't pick up the phone when I was sick. I deserved more than that, and so do you. The man who shows up the same way every single day, who does what he says, plans and follows through, treats you the same whether life is easy or hard, that man loves you. Not the one who looks great on paper, the one who shows up in real life where it counts. Learn to recognize him and make sure you're ready to receive him when he does. I am not just your coach, I'm your proof. And if you haven't already, grab my free guide, Your Gut Was Right, 25 red flags that are trying to save you time, heartache, and energy. You'll find the link in the description. And if this video helped you, please subscribe. Every week on this channel, we talk about real love, real growth, and what it actually takes to create the relationship you deserve. Because your best relationship starts with you. See you next time.